Hello, this is Dr. Gus Stern at Maryland Vision Institute. I'd like to go over corneal incision locations with a Lensx laser. I think there are three key points to aligning the corneal incision up at the limbus. Due to parallax error in visualization, it's much more important to align the corneal incisions by OCT and not by sight. You want to align the incision just anterior to the OCT image, where the entire cross-section of the cornea, including the middle of the cornea, is opaque. And minorly, you want to keep in mind that the OCT cross-section is through the middle of the incision that you're seeing on the screen. I'd like to go through a few surgical videos to demonstrate exactly these key 3 points. I initially place the incision based upon visualization, and then go through the steps of the OCT guidance of the anterior lens capsule and the lens itself. For this surgery, I adjusted the position of the corneal incision 6 times, and I'll go through each particular time as to why I adjusted it. Here's the first one. It's just kind of a rough estimate as to the position of the corneal incision. I knew it wasn't going to be accurate the first time. This illustration here kind of documents some of the things I look for the position of the corneal incision. The red arrows point to likely areas of arcus senilis, and the pathophysiology of arcus senilis is that it can occur in the anterior and posterior areas of the cornea, but that it typically spares the central portion of the cornea. So whenever you see areas of clearness, as I've indicated here by that red circle, it means that you're not at the limbus. So if you're not at the limbus, you need to go back and adjust your corneal incision position more posterior in this particular case. This is easily done by going back to your main screen, grabbing hold of the corneal incision at the green dot and moving it more posterior. When you do this, the machine automatically redoes the OCT of the anterior lens capsule and the lens, but it does it all in one step. So you just have to hit accept and then click on corneal thickness again. And this is a still photo of that OCT image. And this is an annotation of that image. The red arrows are indicating the area of arcus senilis. And again, there's a circular area of clear cornea here, indicating that the start of the incision is not posterior enough. So again, I'll need to go back to the main screen and drag the corneal incision more posteriorly. And if you were to look at this screen and base where you would place the corneal incision based purely on visualization, you would think that it would be way too far posterior. So we take additional OCT images. Here's a cross-section of the cornea. Here's a still photo of the cornea. And here's an annotation of the cornea, again showing the clear space posterior to the line, meaning that, again, we have to move the incision more posteriorly. So we go back out to the main screen and drag the corneal incision more posteriorly, which automatically induces the Lensx to retake an anterior lens capsule and lens OCT. Again, you can just click the accept button on the bottom screen and then click on corneal thickness. And here's a still image of that cross-sectional image, and there's an annotation of that image. And at this point, I've moved it pretty far posteriorly. I start to see some opacity to the central portion of the cornea marked by the red arrow. And I got a little worried at this point that I potentially may have been a little bit too far posterior in location. So I decided to actually go back and move the corneal incision a little more anterior in position. So I'm just going to go back to the main screen, again drag the corneal incision a little bit more anteriorly in location, and again just click the bottom screen accept button and then corneal thickness again. Here's a cross-section of the cornea, and here's a still photo, and here's an annotated photo. So at this point, I circled the area of clear central cornea, and I'm pretty sure that actually I was wrong, and that actually I can move it a little more posterior and location. So I'm going to go back to the main screen and do that. And here, dragging the main corneal incision more anteriorly, so the OCT automatically rescans. Hit accept on the very bottom screen. Click corneal thickness again. And here's the OCT image. Here's the still photo. And here's the annotated photo. Again, there's this area of opacification of the central cornea. So at this point, I felt pretty confident that the incision was going to be in a decent location. In retrospect, it could have gone a little bit more posteriorly, but still, it's going to be in a great position. So I decided to go ahead and accept this. I clicked accept on that screen, and then did the arcuate incision screen. Of course, did the surgery here, and you can see visually that the incision it hits a little bit of the limbal blood vessels there. So you know it's going to be in a pretty decent position. Here is the surgical video of that case, and it did wind up being right exactly where I wanted it, pretty far posterior. There was some arcus in the area, so it was a tiny bit of work to kind of get in the incision, but that's exactly where I wanted it to be. And I'll just kind of open the incision here and just demonstrate that it's in a pretty good position. I have some other cases from the same surgical day. Here's a case. I just wanted to point out that there can be a disconnect between the visual representation on the screen. Here it looks like that incision's all the way into the conjunctival blood vessels, and the actual surgical result, which is here's at a perfect location at the limbus. So it's very important, again, to visualize things through OCT imaging. This is another case that I did the same day, and this is a little bit easier to see how the entire cornea is white there and the incision is placed just anterior to it. Here is the laser making the incision, and I'd like to bring up a good point on this, which is if you did it just by visualization, it would appear that the incision went way into the conjunctiva. Kind of took a still photo of it there to kind of show that. But on surgery, because we got it by OCT imaging, it's in the perfect position as shown here in this actual surgical video of that same case. Here's another case on the same day, and I do this for illustrative purposes of showing an incision that wound up being a little bit anterior to where I actually wanted it to be. It could have been a little bit more posterior, and so I show this video just to show kind of some of the things I could have done to make it a little bit more posterior in location. Here's a cross section from that surgery, and I'm going to take a still photo of it here in just a minute. I do adjust it here, move it back more posterior than the computer program showed. And here's the second image, which I've annotated here. And you can see that there's a little clear space behind there. And here's the actual lasering, and it winds up being just a little bit, maybe 1 to 2 millimeters more anterior than I would have liked it. So again, just move those incisions back until the middle portion of the cornea is white or opaque. Here's an additional surgery from the same day. Again, I'm just showing these for repetition here. Again, I adjusted this incision a couple of times to get it in the good position so that the center of the cornea is white. Here's the first image, shows that there's a little bit of clear cornea in the middle there. So I move it way out, and if you look at the visualization of it, it's way beyond what you would normally do if you just based it on visualization again. But based it on OCT, you get a much better accurate representation of where that incision is actually going to be. So I adjusted it out. I think that's the second adjustment, making it more posterior in location, and show an additional cross section of the cornea here. And it looks to be at that time that center is starting to become white there, so I accepted that. And here's the surgical, or here's the video of the laser and the surgical correlation here. It's in a very good position, maybe 1 millimeter anterior to the limbus. Could have been maybe 1 millimeter a little bit more posteriorly, but still in a very good location. So this is Dr. Gus Stern at Maryland Vision Institute, and thank you for watching.